Our next speaker that we're going to bring to the stage, I want to bring the question to the audience: what does home taste like? What does it look like? What does it smell like? I think this next storyteller really embodies that in her brand and all the amazing products that she brings to the table. So please help me in welcoming Nona Lim of Nona Lim Foods.
Growing up in Singapore, I've always had a streak of defiance, and I never listened. She would tell me, I want you to stay in Singapore after graduating. Instead, I moved to London to consult. She told me, find a good Singaporean man and marry him. Instead, I married my guy. She told me, have a good, stable career in accounting or consulting and one of those. Instead, I became, in her words, a street hawker. Defiance has also led me to explore the path that's less trodden, to go against the grain. It led me to pick up competitive fencing at 31 years old while starting my business at the same time. That gave me defiance gave me that grit and resilience as well, especially since I was competing against professional athletes who were usually a decade or more younger than me. They would have started training at about 8 years old, and they would train 2 to 3 times a day, 5 to 6 days a week. So there was one time I was in Orléans, France, competing in a team event representing Singapore. And we were up against the Russian team. So the Russians, they were the world champions, they were Olympic medalists. And in the team event, there are 3 fencers on each team. We fenced a total of 9 bouts and 5 points per bout. So in the last bout, the score was 44. And I had scored all the 4 points in my previous bouts. So I'm getting ready to go out for the last bout. And they decided to switch out the reserve that was fencing the first 2 bouts and brought in the number 1 strongest fencer, who also happens to be the world number 1 fencer. And I was going, beep. I guess they'll bring her in to warm her out for her next fight, which is kind of like the real thing that they're going for. So we got up, and before you start your fencing, you test the equipment, you salute each other. So I was testing the equipment, and I said to her, I will try to give you a good warm-up. Cheeky defiance actually worked really well. I think for some reason it just calmed my nerves, and I had the best bout ever, and I actually beat her 8-5, which is great, right? Sometimes you feel lost, but it still felt good, right? I think she had a very hard time. I think her coaches and her teammates were laughing at her afterwards, but hey. So, that defiance actually has played really well as an entrepreneur. A lot of times, as a small startup, we're going up against large CPGs with a lot of resources, and that, that defiance, the grit, the resilience has really allowed me to hang in there and not be too intimidated. It has also led to quite a bit of innovation. One thing, when I want to go against the grain and do something that no one else has done before, it led me to launch the first detox or the first meal kit delivery business before Blue Apron and Hello Fresh and all the rest. More than a decade ago, it led me to launch the first food-based detox program very early on. We launched the first bone broth in stores before it was even trendy. But it doesn't always work. What happened is that sometimes I end up being too innovative, too ahead of my time. And so having launched the meal kit delivery business, that was before Facebook was popular, before Instagram existed, which meant that the customer acquisition strategy was almost impossible to execute. And I launched the detox business before juice cleansing was even popular. So how do you gain traction there? Or I would launch a ginseng bone broth, which is my favorite, but it's not quite a mainstream flavor. And so as I grow older and more mellow, I'm learning to listen. I listen to my customers. They tell me that they want convenience. So I take the bone broth and put them into this convenient coffee cup format. And that's done really, really well. I learned to listen to my employees. They tell me I'm running too fast, and sometimes I micromanage. And so, and so I got myself a professional coach a year ago, and it's been transformational. And I'm learning to listen to my unconscious and to my gut. I walked away from a $2 million investment a few years back because it just didn't feel right. It was really one of the most painful things I've done because I've invested so much energy and time to work with the investor, and also it meant that I had to go all the way back out again to fundraise. It turned out to be the best thing I did, and so I'm glad that I've done that. And finally, I learned to listen to my mother. She always told me that a knife cannot be sharp on both edges, and she'll say that in Chinese. She told me that I have to focus on either fencing or my business. And me being defiant, decided that, I can do both. And so I did both for a very long time. Finally, in the 2012 Olympics qualifications, I missed the London Olympics by 1 point in a match. I was really upset and devastated and decided to give up fencing. And since then, I've had a daughter, and the business has gone really well and picked up a lot more momentum. And so, I've learned that my mom can be right. Today, I'm older and wiser. I still have that streak of defiance, but it's more about defying the limitations that have been set upon me. I find myself in challenges, my strengths, my intelligence, my compassion, my resilience, and my determination for justice. And I find my growth in listening